That is all I do, is risk management for the police department. First, I would like to thank the JACO staff, Osac and Mr. Shell, for an excellent process. As by my count, I'd forgotten some of the dates and events that he had mentioned. I thought it was only 6 times that anyone in this audience could have made their opinion known, but it turned out to be 8. And indeed, although he didn't have to, he in fact gave Trails Use Task Force and COMBA an audience for about 2.5 hours just last Friday, in which he went through in much greater detail the guiding positions and although again he didn't have to, indicated what he liked about the various plans and what he didn't like. So I really, Team Evergreen and Trails Use Task Force really appreciate the opportunity. It's always important to have a fair process, and there were meetings here, and if anyone wished to avail themselves of those meetings, they simply could have shown up and they would have been listened to. Let's talk about risk management. Mr. Shell is entirely correct. And to answer Mr. Lancey's question directly, I have practiced in every court in this state. Colorado law nor federal law require a public entity such as a county to actually insure 100% of the time. But I will tell you this, that if you do not take steps to lessen the risk, you do in fact expose yourself to liability. I believe, and I know Chuff believes as well as the Team Evergreen, that this in fact is a reasonable risk management scheme. Does it affect the mountain bike community? Certainly it does. But in an ordered society, one cannot do as one pleases 100% of the time. That is the plain fact that we are in a litigious society, and to ignore it is not to face reality. Let me explain this a little bit by analogy to a case, and I can indicate to you that literally everybody in this room understands the concept of risk management. When any one of us, as a mountain biker, puts on a pair of spectacle glasses to protect ourselves against debris on the trail, or our helmet, or our shoes, for instance, or our gloves, or if we're riding with a lot of travel on our fork and we have like rock gardens to go through, we are in fact engaging in risk management. We don't call such activities anti-mountain biking. Thus, I am at a complete loss to understand how, when the county takes measured steps through consultation with its user groups to engage in risk management in order to avoid liability, both political and legal, how that can be construed as anti-mountain bike, simply because it ends up impacting a group. It's true that it impacts a group, but think on this for a moment. What other 2 groups have been impacted? As you know, the Trail Use Task Force specific job is to dialogue with the other user groups. In the course of preparing our proposal, we learned that the equestrians have literally been run off of this park. If that's not a restriction de facto, I don't know what greater restriction could be. They're not even in the park anymore. With respect to hikers, they hike and hike in a way where they're ready to flinch at any moment because of the practices, as Mr. Schutze mentioned, of outliers. And it is a true shame that a small percentage of our community has got us all in this room at this point. But that is the plain fact as well. The majority of riders in this room do not ride like that. And of course they're concerned about their privilege to ride being affected by a few. As you well know, Mr. Shell just mentioned that COMBA made some excellent suggestions with respect to outreach and education that, as he put, are givens. And indeed, I hope that COMBA and Team Evergreen and other entities can cooperate together to, in fact, make those programs that will help a lot. But the main reason that the Trails Use Task Force made its proposal is that the proposal to build new trail would take more time, and each day that went by increased the risk. Let me talk about a case that will illustrate this. Everybody in the room knows about the McDonald's case where the woman spilled coffee, ended up with 3rd-degree burns. It's a cliche, it's a joke. What people don't know is in the McDonald's case, there were 700 notices to McDonald's that other incidents like that had occurred. They had been asked to lower the temperature of their coffee. They had been asked to put warnings. So what did they do? They went to trial, and they used the defense of statistical insignificance. I know Mr. Foreman will know what this is. You can use any set of numbers and you can turn them into something that says that the probability of something occurring is statistically insignificant. With the number of notices that they had, 700, compared against the number of coffee sold every morning in McDonald's, you came up with the figure of a 1 in 24 million chance that somebody would spill coffee. And you know what? That's a great number. That's a number that me as a trial lawyer could do a lot in front of a jury. Unfortunately, it worked all the way up until the jury awarded the plaintiff almost $3 million. Statistical insignificance is similar to the reliance by some on the conflict survey of Jacobs. The conflict surveys show, in fact, that conflict is down. But the risk to our community in an occurrence, that is, someone spilling the coffee, whether because they're not skilled enough to carry it, or in fact, worse, that they're uncaring as far as how they ride, is a risk that Trails Use Task Force and Team Evergreen are not willing to make. And indeed, I would say that the privilege to ride Apex is not a coin to be squandered in a reckless bet on whether someone's going to spill the coffee or not. The plain fact is, in the political world, if something happened on this park in a disastrous manner, either legally or politically, we would be in a much worse situation than we are today. That is, there might not even be a public comment process. Team Evergreen and Tuft are gratified that in fact we have this process now in advance of such a thing. And as if to put a fine point on it, some of you may not know, on the very first Apex solicitation comment day, which I can't recall, was in June, I happened to be up with a mini crew up on the saddle of Windy's Saddle, pardon me, and a ranger came up to me and indicated that an elderly gentleman and his wife had just been run down, literally on the eve of the first day. So for anyone to say to me that this is never going to happen is just not going to be very convincing. And indeed, I just remembered as I said this to you that on that very day as well, there was an incident on Apex itself. Again, another incident. The plain fact of it is that this is an excellent risk management scheme. I do not ignore the fact that it affects a particular group. But in fact, there are 2 other groups that have been affected to this point. And I believe that Mr. Schell's goal and his staff's goal of bringing those groups back and making the park safe for them to use is a notable goal. And more importantly, it's a goal that will keep him out of court. With respect to going forward in 2010, I guess I would simply caution my fellow riders, my friends, and my former friends with respect to this, that you should ride Apex from here on as though your privilege to ride depends on it, because it does. Thank you very much.